Welcome to the water pump.
Dr. Gray, are you there?
I'm here. Are you ready now?
Yes.
Thank you. Welcome to the Water Policy and Legislation Committee and special meeting of the Board of Directors for West Basin Municipal Water District, April 13th. It's 1:02. And I'm calling this committee meeting to order. And Mr. General Manager, do we have a quorum?
We'll start with Director Deere.
Here.
Director Williams.
Here.
Director Houston. Director Alvarez. And Chair Gray.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much.
Okay. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 3, public comment. Do we have any public comment?
I believe we have no public comments here in the room. And we also will see if there's anyone on the online platform who might have a public comment to raise their hand. It appears that there's no hands raised on the platform at this time. And so there are no public comments to be recognized. Chair Gray.
Thank you very much. Item 4, presentations. Are there any presentations?
No presentations for today.
All right, thank you. Item 5, action calendar. Mr. General Manager, please.
Yes. So we have item A, which is our consideration of our water shortage contingency at a level 3 from our water shortage contingency plan. And we have Matt Bay, who's here to give us the presentation and the staff recommendation. So Matt, please.
All right, great. Thank you, Greg. So this item begins on page 3 of the agenda packet. And staff is bringing this item to this committee today for your feedback and consideration of our recommendation to move from a shortage level 3 down to a level 1 or level 0 of our water shortage contingency plan. My summary report will provide some background on where we've been during the last few years of the drought to where we find ourselves today in more of a water surplus situation. However, the memo in the agenda packet provides a more comprehensive history and details about the circumstances and actions that have led us to recommend the action before you today. As everyone knows, between 2020 and late 2022, California experienced severe and worsening drought conditions, which constrained imported water availability, reduced our water storage supplies in our key reservoirs, and resulted in increasing restrictions on water use by state, regional, and local water providers. Over the past 2 years, the state of California has issued voluntary 15% water use reduction targets. They've implemented prohibitions on wasteful uses of water. They've banned the irrigation of non-functional turf in commercial, industrial, and institutional properties. And they've required urban water suppliers to implement shortage response actions associated with a level 2 or higher shortage declaration. During this same period of time, the Metropolitan Water District Board of Directors took several actions that imposed a variety of voluntary and mandatory restrictions. These actions kind of reached somewhat of a crescendo in April of 2022 when the Metropolitan Board declared a water shortage emergency for state water project dependent areas. And at that time, they instituted mandatory water use restrictions that affected nearly 7 million people in Southern California. Before the water supply picture greatly improved in early 2023, Metropolitan had begun planning for the potential activation of its water supply allocation plan, which we've been subject to in the past, and it would have impacted all of their member agencies, including West Basin. For West Basin, the Board of Directors first activated the district's water shortage contingency plan in July of 2021, when they implemented the shortage level 1. Based on worsening drought conditions and new restrictions, the board built upon their leadership by proactively moving to a shortage level 3 in November of that same year, 2021, making West Basin one of the first water suppliers in Southern California to move to a level 2 or higher. Last May, following the extraordinary dry winter months, the board urged the entire service area to uniformly limit outdoor irrigation to no more than 2 days per week as a means of sharing the pain with some of the other metropolitan member agencies that were being subjected to the metropolitan water use restrictions. And in a very impressive fashion, these actions would really begin to drive our water use down in the service area in the summer of 2022. And as we've kind of mentioned before, in calendar year 2022, we had the lowest ever imported water use, ending the year below 100,000 acre feet, again, for the first time ever. With the series of strong storms that came through the state in January to March of this year, many of our communities have been able to dramatically limit their outdoor water use with savings each month reaching upwards of 35% in January and February of this year compared to 2020. With 3 months left to go in the fiscal year, current projections show that the 12-month imported water demand for fiscal year 22-23 is expected to set yet another record low for imported water use. Just again, showing the great job that our cities and our retail water agencies have done to respond to the calls for saving water. Going back to the water conditions in late December of last year, just when I think we had all thought we had reached somewhat of a breaking point in regard to the drought and the dire water supply outlook, the skies opened up, as we know, and California saw more than 15 atmospheric rivers bring unprecedented amounts of rain and snow to nearly every part of the state. A summary of recent statewide water conditions is provided in the board memo. However, one incredible statistics that I want to leave with you is the Southern Sierra Nevada snowpack, which as of yesterday stood at 320% of normal for this time of year. Based on the results of this amazing winter, DWR has increased the state water project allocation to 75% of requested supplies. That's the highest it's been since 2017. And that allowed Metropolitan and other state water project contractors to begin replenishing their storage reserves. It allowed them also to return some of the health and human safety supplies that it had taken just a year previously. And while it didn't have quite the level of precipitation as seen in California, the Colorado River watershed is also enjoying a sizable snowpack this year. And while the immediate challenges on the river are still ever present, there is some temporary relief expected, at least for this year. So based on these strong conditions, California has now rolled back many of its drought emergency actions, including the requirement for level 2 shortage actions by urban water suppliers and the 15% voluntary water use reduction targets. On page 14 of the agenda packet is a copy of the governor's executive order that terminated several of the drought-related provisions. On the other hand, the state's prohibition on wasteful water uses remains in effect, as does the ban on irrigating non-functional turf. And following suit, Metropolitan recently rescinded its emergency water conservation mandate for the state water project dependent areas, although it does continue to call for voluntary water conservation measures under a less serious water supply alert. As you'll see from the drought monitor graphic on packet page 13, much of the state is now considered to be in a non-drought state, including in LA County, which really has only a very, very small part in the northeast part of the county that's classified as abnormally dry. So based on these events and actions, staff believes the time is right for the West Basin Board to consider ramping down the district's level 3 shortage declaration to something that reflects the end of the drought conditions in California, although with an eye on the continued challenges on the Colorado River and the upcoming state-imposed water use objectives that will continue to impact our retailers. As I mentioned earlier, we're currently observing the lowest ever imported water demand in our service area. And when you compare that to kind of our 10-year historical average water use, our current use is expected to end the year about 10 to 12,000 acre feet less than the 10-year average, which is about 10 to 12% less. In looking at other previous post-drought years, and I would say that 2023 is going to be considered a post-drought year. The usual trend is to see somewhat of a rebound in water use in the following year or two after an above average kind of wet winter. The reasons for this are multiple, but they include a reduction in drought messaging that you'll see, drought fatigue, a relaxation or elimination of emergency restrictions, which we've already seen, and just kind of an overall perception that it might be okay for water use habits to return to more of a historical normal since the water supplies are no longer constrained. As this board considers moving down to a level 1 or level 0 shortage, one question to ponder is to what extent are you comfortable with allowing a rebound in water demand to occur in our communities? Is it okay for there to be a slight rebound of perhaps a few thousand acre feet that we might expect, a bigger rebound that takes us back above the 100,000 acre foot milestone? Or do we want to work with our retail agencies to keep actions in place that maintain demand more or less at their current levels? I believe that the action you recommend to the full board will begin to set the tone for what the next year or two looks like. So the options before you today are first, a level 0 shortage, which essentially signifies a non-shortage condition, and which in general comes with fewer shortage response actions. This compares somewhat to a level 1 shortage, which establishes a water reduction target of up to 10%, and which potentially sends a slightly stronger message to our region and your communities and our purveyors that conservation actions continue to be needed as part of a new normal. Now, one of the great things about the water shortage contingency plan is its flexibility. It's not overly prescriptive in nature. If the board decides to move to a level 0, we would expect to continue offering water use efficiency and outreach and education programs that aim to make our communities more resilient. Likewise, if the board decides on a level 1, there could be somewhat of a heightened level of action, but the actual difference in the implementation of shortage responses and our communications with our communities, some of which are detailed in the board memo, could be quite subtle. I think the main differences between a level 1 and a level 0 is that a level 1, number 1, it signals a slightly stronger message. Number 2, it conveys that West Basin continues to be a leader for regional water supply reliability. And number 3, it sets the stage for maintaining some of the momentum that we built up over the last couple of years in terms of our actions. Again, we're tracking about 10 to 12% below our 10-year average. So if you were to move down to a level 1 shortage, which has a 10% reduction target attached to it, it would allow us to transition into a phase where really we're trying to maintain those water savings that were achieved over the past year. Also, I did want to share that we have been in contact with a number of our retailers about a potential change in our shortage level, and some of them have indicated to us that they plan to move down to a level 1 from a level 2 rather than down to a level 0 for some of the same reasons that I've expressed here today. With that said, I would now like to turn it over to the committee for further discussion and feedback, and I'm happy to clarify or address any questions that you might have.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
You're giving us a recommendation of 1 or 0. Now, I find that unusual because the staff usually gives a recommendation of 1 or the other. So what is your recommendation? 1 or 0? Which is it?
Make either one work, but I do think that a level 1 could provide us with a little more flexibility. I think it does send a little stronger signal to our communities to keep at it. And so, if you're asking me, I think a level 1 gives us a little bit extra incentive to message that to our communities. But we could make either one work. So that's why we did provide the option.
Thank you.
I would agree with the idea of the level 1 as well, because we recognize that while we've had a banner year in terms of precipitation, snowpack, filling our reservoirs, it doesn't take too many cycles of dry period for us to be right back where we started. And so maintaining, water use efficiency behavior among our consumers should remain a priority for the district. And so I think a level 1 would promote that water use efficiency behavior more effectively than level 0.
Madam Chair, I think we should adopt the level 1. I would make that motion.
All right, in committee, so first of all, let me thank Matt for that very thorough presentation, and I agree with my co-director on the board that I think the recommendation should be specific because it does give 2 options, and so I think staff needs to change the recommendation so we can support the recommendation. I'm not sure if we can vote on anything, so maybe the process is for staff to change the recommendation and we can agree to the recommendation to suggest the board support it. So maybe that's the process.
Yeah, I think what we would do is if we take your feedback to use the level one as the recommended action, we would write the resolution to reflect that, and that would be the recommendation to the full board.
Perfect. Is
Right.
that, okay, Director Deere?
Fine with me. How about Director Williams?
Director Williams, I'm sorry, are you there? Did you want to make any comments?
I'm here, although I'm not a member of the committee, I would vote for what's available now, the level one. I mean, in every talk that I started off with water reliability and water use efficiency. And that's our main thrust. And I don't think you should ever move off of that because the drought is never really over. So I would, if I had to vote, I'd vote for it.
Okay, so thank you, Director Williams. So the committee recommends level two. And so if that recommendation can reflect that, the staff recommendation when it goes to the board.
Level one, you mean, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, level one. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Director Deere. Level one.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Director Deere. Okay. All right, we'll go to the next item 6, information calendar. Mr. Reed?
Yes, absolutely. And if I may just take a moment to acknowledge, we have a visitor here in the boardroom with us, Ms. Terry Alex from LA County Waterworks District 29. And so certainly, one of our retail water agencies and also a sister public agency. And so thank you for being with us here today. Okay, all right. So with that, you're asking for item number 6A on the information calendar, Director?
Yes, that's the next item, please.
Okay, and so we have, again, Matthew Vey is here to provide us an oral update on the 2023 West Basin Elected Officials Forum. So Matt, please give us that update.
Thank you, Greg. So I'll try to make this a pretty brief update. And there's no associated memo included in the board packet today. So initial preparations for the 2023 West Basin Elected Officials Forum, or what we're calling the Water Issues Forum, have now begun in earnest. The event's scheduled to take place on May 5th from 8 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility. The event will include breakfast, lunch, 2 optional tours of the recycled water facility, as well as a main program that will feature speakers from a number of different local and regional water suppliers. Our team has been working with the General Manager's Office to develop the agenda, identify and secure the speakers, and to put together the invitation list for local elected officials and staff. The PI team is taking the lead on managing the logistics leading up to and including the day of the event, developing graphics for the event, and helping with the invitation and event flyer. The ITT team will provide support for the event on site at ECL. On March 30th, staff distributed an email to 137 contacts, which included mayors, city council members, city managers, and other key staff at all 17 cities in the service area. On April 4th, we distributed a second email invitation to an additional 82 contacts, which included board members and superintendents at a number of school districts located in the service area. The email invitation was also shared with the General Manager's Office and the PI department for further distribution. Staff would greatly appreciate the efforts of any of our directors who are interested in going to let us know. And if you could also further share the invitation with your own contacts and professional groups, that would be great, as we do want this event to be a success with a diverse assortment of policymakers in attendance. The invitation was also provided to the El Camino College Board of Trustees and Chancellor's Office, and will also be distributed to the LA County Board of Supervisors, as well as to the local offices of our state and federal delegation. We're also coordinating additional outreach with South Bay COG which has good working relationships with South Bay and the surrounding area elected officials. And then there's also opportunities for us to work with our retail agencies to further promote this event. I and the water policy staff work together to create a flyer, which can and will be used to further promote the event. And in an effort to go paperless, PI staff is also developing an event landing page that will be accessible to registrants and attendees via QR codes that will be displayed on tables at the event as well as on people's badges. To date, we've had about a dozen folks that have registered for the event. It's likely that there's some folks who aren't registered that will end up attending, just as likely there are some who are registered that won't attend. But we're hopeful that with all the other outreach and promotional activities that I've mentioned here, that we'll see a bump in our registration numbers in the next 3 weeks before the event. In addition to all the other above mentioned actions, we plan to send out a follow-up email to all of the registrants a week or so prior to the event in order to confirm their attendance and to provide a final agenda of the event. And with that, that concludes my update on the elected officials forum. Please let me know if you have any questions or feedback.
Director Gear?
Yes, we did invite all the municipal officials, the mayors, council, city clerks, city treasurers.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Director Williams?
Yes, I didn't hear Cal State Dominguez mentioned.
I'd be happy to add them to the list. We have not reached out to them yet.
I think we should.
Okay.
Is that it, Director Williams?
Yes,
Okay.
that's it.
Matt, how many folks have RSVP'd so far?
So far, I believe that we're up to 12.
Okay. Maybe at the next update, you could provide us a list so we can kind of see, unless you've already done that, who has RSVP.
Yes, we can definitely do that. And I know that Greg has reached out to a number of the speakers, some of which are confirmed, some of which we're still kind of waiting to see who the contact will be. But we can certainly provide an update either next week or maybe at the board meeting.
Okay.
However you
And
want to
so-
do that, Greg.
So who are the speakers that we're inviting to speak?
So we've invited folks
I'm sorry.
from Metropolitan Water District and LA Sanitation, LADWP, and WRD.
But who are specifically the speakers?
So from WRD, it would be Stefan Tucker. From Metropolitan, we invited Adele, but I believe he's not in the country at that time. And so they're going to, they provided us with an alternative. I don't remember the name off the top of my head.
John Badarsky.
John
Badarsky.
Badarsky.
Okay.
So
Okay.
And then from LA Sanitation, it was Barbara Romero, but I don't think that.
We haven't received, and actually, I think she said that she's not available. So we're looking for a delegate.
Right. And then from LADWP,
Lon Quan on behalf of Anselmo Collins.
DeLon Quam will be. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Matt. Any further questions on that item? All right. I think we're done. I'm sorry, someone? That's
I said-
it. Okay. Let's go to the next item, B, please.
Okay, and so our next item B is our Safe Clean Water Program update. And so our Safe Water Program is going to be updated by Matt.
Yep.
So Matt, please continue.
Great. Thank you, Greg. So I'm now on page 18 of the agenda packet. I will be sharing some updates on the Safe Clean Water Program. Just as a brief refresher, Measure W was passed by voters in 2018, and its passage resulted in the creation of the Safe Clean Water Program and parcel tax. This program funds multi-benefit stormwater capture projects throughout Los Angeles County. The parcel tax generates about $280 million per year which gets further allocated into the following areas. 50% goes to regional programs, 40% goes to municipal programs, and 10% goes to a district program for public education, schools, workforce development, and the administration of the program. In total, more than $670 million in regional program funding has been provided to 101 projects, 55 studies, and 12 watershed coordinator positions. Of that amount, the vast majority, $530 million, has gone to projects that benefit disadvantaged communities. As you may remember, West Basin represents the interests of the region on the Safe Clean Water Program on those issues by serving on the steering committees of both the Central Santa Monica Bay watershed and the South Santa Monica Bay watershed areas. West Basin's Assistant General Manager, E.J. Caldwell, serves on both committees. These committees meet on a regular basis to develop funding plans and to make recommendations on projects, studies, and other activities that provide various water benefits to our communities. The Central Santa Monica Bay area includes Bayona Creek and Marina del Rey. It receives about $17 million each year to fund projects and programs. Also, the South Santa Monica Bay watershed area includes the Dominguez Channel, and it receives about $18 million each year for its funding priorities. When the South Santa Monica Bay Steering Committee meets in person, those meetings are held at the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility. I wasn't sure if Craig Cadwalader is on the call today with us. Craig is the chair of the South Santa Monica Bay watershed area, and if he was here, I was going to give him the opportunity to just make any comments if that's okay with the committee. But I can see a hand raised.
Yes,
Director Gray?
yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, I'm here.
Uh,
Are you asking Craig to speak?
Yes.
Yes.
Like, go ahead, Craig.
Okay, thank you, Chair Gray, and Director Deere, and I see Director Williams there, and General Manager Reed and staff. My name is Craig Cadwalader, and I do currently serve as the chair of the South Santa Monica Bay Watershed Area Steering Committee, as I did last year, and I was vice chair for the previous 2 years. And this is one of my favorite programs. I'm very privileged that I was appointed to this committee, and we have reviewed our projects for this fourth year of funding, and the Regional Operating Committee is looking at those. We do have a little breather in our regularly scheduled meetings. Our April meeting we have canceled, but we have a meeting this coming Monday with the county to determine how we would respond to feedback from the Regional Operating Committee that is meeting on April 20th. And we really encourage as much participation as possible from all the agencies. And we really want more public participation and appreciate the generous offer from West Basin to utilize the Edward C. Little facilities for our in-person meetings. And I think that's perfectly appropriate, and we appreciate that. And we are in full support of any of these items that help capture, clean, and reuse stormwater. So I think that's even more important since we've witnessed all the recent rain events, and to capture these items before they go into the bay. And one side note, I am finalizing comments on the draft EIR for the Portuguese Bend landslide mitigation project, and I would like to, if possible, see if water capture can happen on that project, so instead of discharging to the ocean. So thank you for allowing me to comment. I'm always available for questions or comments, and I'm here to support everybody in the watershed. So thank you for allowing me to comment.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you very much. Any questions with Craig, or do we go back to Matt?
Let's go back to that.
Thank you, Craig, for your comments. Sorry I put you on the spot, but appreciate hearing from you. So the last few months of the program have been somewhat quiet in terms of major actions. However, in October of last year, the Board of Supervisors adopted the fiscal year 22-23 Stormwater Investment Plan, where they allocated $144 million or $431 million projected over 5 years for 24 projects, 12 studies, and a dozen watershed coordinator positions across the 9 watershed areas. Also, in February of this year, each steering committee met to discuss potential projects that could be included in next year's stormwater investment plan. Once the recommended projects are all finalized, they'll be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors for final approval. And then finally, I just wanted to mention that there's a really nice interactive map on this Safe Clean Water website that shows all of the pending and funded stormwater projects. It allows you to click on each of the kind of the map markers to get more details about the project. And the link to the map on the website is provided in the board memo for this item if you ever care to look at that. So that concludes my report on Safe Clean Water Program. Please let me know if you have any questions about this.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. Director Deere,
Yes?
you have
No
any
questions.
questions?
No, thank you.
Director Williams? I think, thank you.
No, thank
Director
you.
Williams?
No, thank you.
Matt, you're very thorough, no questions, and thank you, Greg, for your comments on that item too. Okay, Ms. General Manager, the next item, please.
I believe we will continue with Matt with the legislative update for March 2023. So we'll
Okay.
continue there.
Thank you, Greg. I'll be starting with the state legislative update, and this update begins on page 21 of the packet. However, let's go ahead and move to page 23. I also want to note that there's an accompanying list of bills that we're tracking that begins on page 26. So the state legislature came back this week from their spring recess. Their days over the next couple of weeks will be filled with policy committees and budget hearings as the policy committee hearing deadline approaches in a couple of weeks. As I mentioned during my report on the water shortage contingency plan, on March 24th, Governor Newsom issued an executive order pulling back some of the drought emergency provisions that had been in place for the last 1 to 2 years. This action followed Department of Water Resources' earlier announcement about increasing the state water project allocation from 35 to 75%. While many of the most impactful drought restrictions were rescinded, the state continues to call on Californians to be efficient users of water. And while drought was a primary water issue facing the state over the past few years, the big concern now is flooding, especially in parts of the Central Valley, including the Tulare Lake Basin. As the epic levels of snowpack start to melt this summer, all of that water is going to make its way to areas that are already kind of filled to the brim and experiencing flooding problems. The one thing that the state, I think, has smartly done this year is to relax some of the permitting processes for capturing and recharging groundwater supplies. Basically, the government has told water agencies and farmers, if you can get surplus water supplies into the ground, we're not going to get in your way, which has been really good to see. Even with these measures in place, containing the floodwaters this year is sure to be an incredible challenge this spring and summer. As the governor prepares to release his revised budget in May, which could levy further cuts on programs of interest to West Basin and the water industry as a whole, the district's lobbyists and other trade associations such as Aqua, CMUA, and Water Reuse continue to push back against any potential funding cuts to recycled water, groundwater cleanup, and other infrastructure projects. This year, the governor chose to forego a State of the State speech, and instead he embarked on a week-long tour of the state, speaking to a number of legislative priorities at each stop. And while we're still more than a year out from the next general election in 2024, we will start to see some movement among potential candidates that are vying to replace incumbents that are terming out next year. One such incumbent in our service area is Senator Stephen Bradford, who will be termed out in 2024. One candidate recently announced his intention to run for Bradford's open seat next year. His name is Darren Harris. He was the former chief of staff to Karen Bass and is also the founding president of Black Los Angeles Young Democrats. He was also a former district director for Bradford. Harris currently serves as a special advisor to Congresswoman Sydney Kamlanger-Dove. I now want to move into some of the priority bills that we've been tracking and engaged on the last few months. We plan to start bringing some legislation to this committee next month for possible positions. Now that amendments are being made and bills are being heard in committee, the time's kind of right for us to discuss and consider positions on the most relevant bills. I'm going to just give you a handful of these today. AB 1572 is a bill by Senator Laura Friedman related to non-functional turf and potable water use. For those of you who attended last week's Metropolitan Caucus meeting, you heard Metropolitan staff present an overview of the bill and also received feedback from West Basin, Municipal Water District Orange County, and Long Beach. Some of the concerns related to the responsibility for certification, enforcement, and audits, a need for a more clarity in terms of the definition of non-functional turf, and exempting multifamily residential areas from the bill. Positions on this bill are kind of all over the place right now. Aqua previously took an opposed unless amended position, whereas just this week, Metropolitan's board adopted a support if amended position with authorization for the general manager to move to a co-sponsor position if all of the requested amendments make their way into the bill. From what we've been told, a number of new amendments were made by the bill author this week. So now we'll look to Metropolitan to see if they are satisfied with those amendments. I would expect our staff to bring this bill to the board next month for a support or supportive amended position, depending on if there's any unresolved concerns. This bill will be heard next week in the Assembly Water Parks and Wildlife Committee. AB 1573 is the companion bill to 1572, also authored by Assemblymember Friedman. It has been amended into a bill relating to non-functional turf and the Model Water Landscape Efficiency Ordinance. Essentially, this bill would seek to define and phase out the installation of non-functional turf in new developments. It will be heard in Assembly Water Parks and Wildlife next week, and staff will continue to monitor this bill in conjunction with our lobbyist associations and Metropolitan Water District. Next is SB 23 by Senator Ana Caballero, related to expedited permitting for water supply and flood risk reduction projects. This bill is sponsored by Aqua, and it would streamline some of the permitting processes for certain types of water projects. It's widely supported by the water industry and could benefit both Metropolitan and West Basin in future years as some of the programs that we're considering for the region move forward. Staff could bring this one to the board for support position next month. SB 867 is another bill that's introduced by Senator Allen. It's one of multiple climate or resiliency bond measures that would go before voters next year in 2024. It currently has placeholder language, but it's anticipated that the total funding through the bond will be somewhere between $4 and $12 billion. West Basin has expressed its funding priorities to our state lobbyists as well as to Aqua for inclusion in the final version of the bond. This is another potential bill for support if amended position, if our priorities are put into the bill. There are other potential bond measures out there, but because this one is from a legislator within our service area, we think it makes more sense to push our support into this one. The bill passed the Senate Natural Resources and Water Committee and will now go to Senate Government and Finance on April 26th. AB 1216 is legislation by Assemblymember Al Mersucci relating to wastewater treatment plants and air quality. The bill essentially would require the Hyperion plant to install and operate what's called a fence line air quality monitoring system to keep track of certain emissions. There have been numerous complaints from the El Segundo community about odors and other issues over the past year. This is a bill that staff will continue to track. At this time, it's referred to Assembly Natural Resources, but no hearing date as of yet. So we'll keep you updated on that one. SB 366 is another bill, is another major bill for the water industry. It's sponsored by CMUA, and it would modernize the California Water Plan and set long-term water supply targets of 10 to 15 million acre feet utilizing such resources as recycled water, groundwater recharge, surface storage, and others. It's widely supported by the water industry, but it could be opposed by environmental groups. Staff wants to look at this bill a little closer before possibly taking it to the board for a position next month. It is also set for a hearing on April 25th. Another big issue this year that was also mentioned at last week's Metropolitan Caucus meeting relates to water rights issues. Metropolitan has proposed a set of policy principles regarding water rights. However, they have yet to adopt any official positions on bills that have been introduced this year. At this time, West Basin does not plan on wading fully into the water rights issues, but it is keeping informed and is participating in multiple work groups through both Aqua and Metropolitan. As Metropolitan continues to track this issue, we will let you know of any major actions or requests of member agencies with regards to the water rights bills. With that, that concludes my state report. Before I move on to the federal affairs update, please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions, Director Deere or Director Williams?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Please proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Gray. I'm now on page 47 of the agenda packet. And I will be focusing my comments on two main topics. First, I just wanted to remind you that West Basin's federal advocacy trip to Washington, D.C. is set to take place next week. A group of directors and staff will be in town April 17th to 19th in order to visit with the district's congressional delegation, to hand out the 6 Legislator of the Year awards to 6 different members, and to meet with the Bureau of Reclamation and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers about West Basin's current and future projects. Congress will be just coming back from a 2-week break, so we should be catching them at a pretty good time before they get back into their hearings and committee meetings. It's been a few years since we've gone on one of these trips, so it'll be a good opportunity for us to connect with the new members that are out there, reconnect with the longer serving members, and to talk about West Basin's ongoing projects, programs, and priorities.
Which directors are going?
I believe Director Houston is right now the only one that's confirmed. I did want to recognize the outstanding efforts of our Washington, D.C. advocacy team, Pete Evich, Jeff Bowman, and Ashley Strobel for putting together a great itinerary that includes 3 busy days filled with 14 meetings with congressional representatives, agency staff, and other partner agencies. I also wanted to note that one of this year's award winners, Senator Dianne Feinstein, is battling some health issues and will not be in town to receive her award in person. However, one of her longtime staffers that focuses on water issues will be meeting with our group in place of the senator. Staff will plan to provide a brief summary overview of this year's federal trip at a future Water Policy Committee meeting. Next, as you may have already heard, some big news came out of the U.S. Department of the Interior on Tuesday of this week. The department released its draft Colorado River proposal via a draft supplemental environmental impact statement, the 2007 Colorado River Guidelines. The new proposal, which the federal government introduced since no consensus approach has yet been reached by the 7 Colorado River states to date, is intended to address shortages on the Colorado River. The draft proposal is available for review for 45 days, I believe, until May 30th, with a final supplemental environmental impact statement expected to be adopted in summer 2023. The proposal outlines 3 alternatives, really only 2 of those are serious. Alternative 1 would target Arizona and Nevada for most of the potential reductions in water allocations. This alternative would give more priority to senior water rights holders in those years when river flows are lower. Because California has a lot of senior priority rights, it wouldn't be as affected in that alternative. Alternative 2 is a little more damaging to California agencies. It would spread the burden of future shortages proportionally across the 3 lower basin states, Arizona, Nevada, and California, such that any mandated reductions would be made in the same percentage across all lower water basin users. And then the final alternative, which again is not one that's likely to go anywhere, would be a no action alternative, which would just allow things to continue operating as they currently do. The Interior officials have said it's unlikely that any of those single alternatives would be chosen, but that instead They're hoping that these alternative concepts would encourage the Colorado River users to come to the table to truly reach consensus. In response to the news, Metropolitan on Tuesday of this week released a statement in which it said that based on the initial assessment of the draft proposal, neither of the action alternatives is ideal. They went on to say that both alternatives would include significant supply cuts that would hurt the water district and its partners throughout the basin. They further stated that the 7 states must continue to work toward a short-term consensus-based approach while collaborating on long-term solutions that ensure the sustainability of the river. The state of California also issued a statement on proposal confirming its commitment to the consensus-based approach shared by Metropolitan. Staff will continue to keep this committee apprised of any relevant updates to this process in the coming months. And then just kind of continuing on the topic of the Colorado River, a number of congressional members have joined together to form a Congressional Colorado River Caucus. These lawmakers will discuss critical issues along the river and support the work of the Colorado River Basin states on how to address the worsening levels of drought in the Colorado River Basin. Representative Grace Napolitano, who we're very familiar with, is a friend of the agency. She's a longtime champion of West Basin and our water resiliency programs. She'll be the California delegate to the caucus. And that wraps up my prepared remarks. Additional updates are provided in the VSA monthly report, which goes from page 47 to page 51 of the agenda packet. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions, Director Deere,
No, thank you.
Director Williams?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. For the thorough report, can we go to the next item, please?
Absolutely. We have Tammy Hurley High here to give us our Metropolitan Water District Program update. So please, Tammy, take it away.
All right, thank you, Greg. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Gray, Member Deere, and Director Williams. So this report summarizes the recent activities that Metropolitan has taken at their board meetings last month that include the changes to the water shortage emergency conditions, the Pure Water Southern California program update, and it will conclude with an update on the water supply conditions. So first, regarding the water shortage emergency condition changes, the board did authorize changes, and they removed that mandatory emergency water conservation measures that was declared specifically for the state water project dependent areas. However, Metropolitan Service Area remains under a water supply alert with continued call for voluntary reductions in water use. And recent storm conditions have been helpful. However, Metropolitan is continuing their message for water conservation to be a way of life for all Southern Californians. And this is particularly important as supply reductions along the Colorado River are looming. So we'll, keep a watch on that. But Metropolitan Water District, their staff continue to have ongoing discussions and negotiations with the basin states to address those potential changes to the 2007 interim guidelines that were called upon by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. So the map provided a really good summary, and then we'll continue to keep you apprised as we hear more information on that front. And next, regarding the Pure Water Southern California program, the board had authorized consulting agreement for preliminary design of the conveyance for Reach 2 and Reach 1 and Reach 2. And as you may recall, Metropolitan received state funding in the amount of $80 million, and this is to help planning the early initiation of this project and for the design of the initial conveyance pipeline segment. The initial Reach 1 is located in the city of Carson, and then the Reach 2 alignment will continue from that area through the cities of Long Beach and Lakewood. Also, Metropolitan Board supported a grant application so that they can pursue funding in the amount of $5 million from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation's Water Smart Grant Program in order to prepare a feasibility study. If Metropolitan were to seek any future funding for that project. Included in the memo is attachments A, B, and C that include additional information on the board actions of Metropolitan, and then a list of items that they are looking to report on in the coming months. Lastly, for the water supply update, at the end of this report includes an attachment with the graphics. It starts on page 63 and 64. So there's good news, as you've already heard, for the water supply this year. And the State Water Project, we look at the graph on the left side in the green shaded area for the Northern Sierra snowpack. Has had significant increases due to several storm conditions since December. And the box below that is for Oroville Reservoir. Is actually a little higher right now since March 26th when this graphic was reported. And it's currently at 2.95 million acre feet and 83% of total capacity. And last week on April 3rd, DWR conducted the 4th manual snow survey of the season. And the results included that were recorded were 126.5 inches of snow depth. And it recorded a snow water equivalent of 54 inches, which is 221% of average. So this year's result from the snowstorm will go down as one of the largest snowpack years on record in California. So in fact, this graphic showing all of these percentages are much higher now, as Nat had indicated earlier. And for the Colorado River Basin area on the right side, it showed Lake Powell to be at 22% capacity and then Lake Mead at 28% capacity. In the middle area of the graphic, the gray shaded boxes, this shows information for metropolitan storage areas. So Metropolitan has been working to fill their storage reservoirs. Now they no longer have a supply demand gap, because the supply is now exceeding the demand on their system. So they'll be able to put more water into their storage reserves. So for Lake Skinner, just a month ago, this reservoir was 5,000 acre feet less compared to last year. And now there's 3,000 acre feet more supply compared to last year. Same for Lake Matthews. A month ago, there was 14,000 acre feet more than last year, and now there's 40,000 acre feet compared to last year. As you may have heard, Metropolitan held a briefing at the Diamond Valley Lake to mark a major milestone as they have begun to refill that reservoir with deliveries from the State Water Project, the first time in 3 years. So, on these charts below, the dark shaded area, it says for highlight of the water supply conditions, the second bullet, it highlights that the Department of Water Resources is making additional water available to the state water contractors, and that is categorized under Article 21 water. And Metropolitan has been able to receive additional deliveries from DWR. They've been receiving supplies under Article 21 deliveries since March 22nd. So far, they've received 123,000 acre feet. And this is made available because the San Luis Reservoir is full for the State Water Project's share of that reservoir. So current operations or current allocations for the State Water Project, as you know, right now is still at 75%. However, that may increase to a higher allocation. And if we can look at the second page, the last page, on the left side, the green shaded area for the State Water Project, the Lake Oroville Reservoir forward chart is showing 1.24 million acre feet of additional supply compared to last year. DWR has been making releases from Lake Oroville using the main spillway at the Oroville Dam. And these releases prepare for storage space in Lake Oroville for that runoff that will happen in the spring from the rain and the snow melt. In Lake Oroville, there has been 690,000 acre feet of storage of a gain since the storm began in late December. And then down below is a chart for the San Luis Reservoir. You can see it's full, and that is the reason why DWR is to offer Article 21 supply to the state contractor. And For the Colorado River Basin, the Upper Colorado River Basin is seeing improved water supply conditions as well, with a series of very cold and wet storms. And the snowpack is above normal, at 158% of normal for this date. The runoff into Lake Powell for this water year listed here is 134% of normal. In the past couple of weeks, the Bureau of Reclamation has updated their monthly forecast of the unregulated inflow that would go into Lake Powell. And they've updated that, they're forecasting that to be 156% of average. So there's a lot of indications that this spring and summer unregulated inflow will be more than that. So lastly, in summary, the conditions along the Colorado River Basin are signaling that Lake Powell will release significantly more water compared to what was forecasted a few months ago. And that we may see a slight increase to storage in Lake Mead and Lake Powell this year. And then additional increases to the State Water Project Table A allocations are expected as DWR's allocation studies continue to incorporate forecasted runoff from the developing snowpack. And Metropolitan may even see the allocation increase up to 100%. So watch and see. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Just one quick question concerning the unregulated flow. What does that mean?
As the snow melts and as it goes into the reservoir for Lake Powell. So there's so much snowpack right now. To be that way colder. Well, it's like snow concrete basically. So as the temperatures warm up in the spring and summer months, that water will melt and go into the reservoirs and become more, it will increase the supply. That's
A benefit to the environment then?
Hello?
Thank you.
And one other aspect of that too is also the ability for the runoff to actually make it to the reservoirs. And so there were dry watershed conditions, you know, throughout the drought period. And the runoff would be less than normal because the watershed is absorbing that runoff. But now with the watersheds having more inundation, more of that snow melt is actually able to make it to the reservoirs because the watershed is saturated. So we have a healthier condition for a healthier runoff as well.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, please? Okay, all right, thank you, Tammy, for that thorough report. Thank you very much. Next item.
So we don't have any closed session items for today. So that will take us to
Okay.
director comments and future agenda items.
Thank you very much, Director Deere.
No comments.
All
Thank you.
right, and Director Williams.
Well, thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everyone, staff and general manager and board members and the public for being a part of the conversation today. Thank you very much, and this committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.